Welcome to Neutral Voices. I'm Dr. V, and this is In Depth, where we dig deep in the trenches of what matters. And tonight we are talking about self preservation. Every man's for itself.
Every man
Y'all
for
feel like
himself.
that?
Hey, it's like that sometimes. It got to be
At
like
some
that
point, you
sometimes.
have to be.
Oh, no. I can tell you what, we're going to have some different point of views. So thank you for joining us and hang out with us and actually enjoy the conversation and leave some comments for tomorrow night's show, The Voice of the People. So with that, let me get right into, I have some questions. And if we can, in E, before you go down E road and
What you
just,
mean go down E
I'm just
road?
saying, because I know how you get. So with the passion and the
I ain't got no
emotion.
passion. It's gone.
So I'm just saying. So just for a little bit, let's stick to the script for a little bit.
Why you always
So
putting
when
them
we
out?
say every man for himself, first of all, men, I want you to deal with this. Do you feel like the whole thought of it is learned or is instinct?
I think it's instinctive. And I'm going to tell you why I believe it's instinctive. Because the 2-year-old, let's look at the 2-year-old. At the 2-year-old, you don't have to teach a 2-year-old how to say mine and how to hoard things and get things for themselves. It just becomes their natural being. We all experience a 2-year-old, no matter what they have. It's mine, 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 mine. So it's instinctive. I think it's something that's in us. And we have that fight or flight, reaction to everything. So to be preserved, it's natural. You have that in you.
E, you agree? You feel
Yeah.
like that?
Yes.
Okay. Do
really
you
easy.
think any part of it? So as we grow and we mature, do you think anything is learned?
Yes. I think survival, but the learning how to treat people and learning how to look out for people, that's a more learned behavior than it is anything.
So I agree with the instinct, but I also feel so one of the components to self-preservation is fear. So I think that a lot of that is learned. As we get older, we learn more about death. So we become afraid to die. We learn about, starvation. There are a lot of things that we learn that are not instinctive, that cause us to self-preserve.
Exactly. And you know what? When you say that, you make me think of one of the things I have down is toxic relationships. So when you say that, so imagine a marriage where, I hate to put it on the man, but just say the man is abusive. And so, yeah, there's instinct. But then, as Jill say, and I talk about the fear factor, there is a fear factor that's going to cause that woman to feel a certain way because of what he had done previously. So if he reacted to her questioning him about money and what he did with his money, etc., and he blew up, he hit her, etc., the next time she has to talk about money, what do you think is going to happen?
She's not going to do it.
Right. Or she's going to already be bracing
Right.
herself.
Right.
So she's already trying to figure
Find a
out
way
how to
how to do
preserve
it.
herself. Or maybe she's going to decide that maybe I need to ask this question around somebody else, or I need to be in a certain environment. I need to be at a restaurant, in public, etc. So those things. So I believe it's both.
And I'm agree with you. And we talked about this the other day, and I said I never saw that point of view, but you made me think of 2 movies that I saw, and one of them was Enough and Sleeping with the Enemies. And rewatching those, I understood your point of what you were saying. So yeah, those ladies in those movies, they had to find a way to preserve themselves until they got out of that situation. But those are 2 movies, and when we talked about it, I was like, but watching those 2 movies, it shows that those are things, as you state, they walked on eggshells or navigated differently to preserve themselves until they found their way out.
And even
Absolutely.
like walking into a new relationship. So I feel like you have self-preservation, and then on the other side of the spectrum, you have vulnerability. So if you are so deep into protecting yourself, at some point there comes an armor with that. And so you can't walk into a new relationship with your guard so far up while the other person is being vulnerable, because you're cutting yourself off to your emotions, to everything, even with a friendship or any kind of ship, really.
You're right.
Well,
Go ahead, E. Come on,
I
E.
kind of disagree with some of that as far as having your guards up. It's not having your guards up. It's being mindful of the situation.
But it's a protection mechanism scientifically, so really
Oh,
it is
that's what
having
scientifically.
yeah,
that's what
it is having
Okay, I'm
your,
gonna be quiet then.
your guard up.
I'm just gonna say I'm gonna be quiet
Yeah.
because at the end of the day, at what point, the way y'all's talking about self-preservation at this point, it sounds so negative.
Not
Think about it. Yes, it
necessarily.
is. Yes,
Yeah.
it is. The way y'all explaining self-preservation, it sounds negative.
Yeah, I think
Well,
there are positive
But
aspects
see, here's the
too.
thing.
We just
the-
haven't got to those.
Well,
Absolutely.
okay, well, I'm just saying from the beginning of your conversation, it sounds so negative. It sounds so wrong to have self-preservation, and it's actually a very powerful thing because self-preservation helps you pay attention to a lot of things that's around you.
True.
So if I don't have that self-preservation, I'm not paying attention to things that are around me that can hurt me or that can help me.
Right.
Well, see, there's why I asked you the question up front. You just woke up now.
No,
so,
no, because,
yay, thank you,
no,
alarm.
No, I didn't
there
just
it
wake
is.
up. I just
You
wanted
in
to
the
hear-
building?
I just wanted to hear what y'all had to say because it's like, wow, y'all
Okay,
making
well,
it seem like it's
but-
a bad
but
situation
it's not,
to have self-preservation.
No, we're talking about self-preservation.
I'm
if
just
you're just
listening.
joining us,
It's never
I'm
bad
going
to
to go back to listening.
if you're
wanna
just joining us,
survive.
this is Neutral Voices
I'm
in
going to go
depth.
back to listening. Go ahead.
And
Go.
we're having great conversation about self-preservation at this moment. And so with that being said, so it's funny when we talk about the fear factor and things. So I know we're going to talk about the animals, but I can't help but think about the possum that plays dead, right?
Right.
And so pretty intelligent, but he was made that way. And it's funny because I always thought he was playing dead, like on purpose.
Right.
But his body is designed that when fear comes over
It
him, so
freezes
you
him.
talked about the fear factor and fight and flight, etc. Fear comes over him. And what's the other one? Not just fight, flight. What is it? To stand still? Yeah, you're froze. Basically,
frozen
you
in
can't
fear.
move. And I know people like that.
Yeah, they're afraid. They're
It's
frozen in
like,
fear.
and you, why didn't you move? Why didn't you run, right? How many times we watching movies and that's what we feel like, why didn't you run? But there is a certain thing that happens to you and you just freeze. Well, and that's kind of what's happening to the possum. And I thought, wow.
It's quite amazing.
His body breaks down. And then even with that, things are happening and he's expelling things from his body and he's foaming at the mouth. And all of this is actually taking place because of his protection, and that's the way he's built.
Right.
So when we say, and then that's why I say it is both. So
Right.
some of it is learned because sometimes now we know how to play possum because watch this. Haven't some people in war covered themselves with somebody else's dead body, etc. Right? And even with one of those school shootings,
I was just
right?
Yeah, it's
So-
self-preservation. You
yes.
find,
And-
find
and
things around you.
Yes, and you could have learned that technique, tactic because you heard it, and then you thinking, I'm in this situation, never thought I would be.
And as a woman, I know you were talking the other night. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but you were talking about a situation that you were in where you were at your car and it was dark, and there's been times too, I'm sure every woman or person or whatever, where you feel like somebody's maybe walking behind you, so you get your mind ready for that fight or flight.
That's
So
right.
we learn that because of the dangers we hear about or the stories we hear about, women in parking lots or whatever. So that's something that when we're self-preserving, we don't even think about it. It's just
Exactly.
we jump into that mode.
Right. And where do we think, where's the root? Where does this come from? The whole, because some people, we said, I'm going to put it in my own words, by any means necessary. And I know we're saying every man for himself, but some people, there are no boundaries.
Yeah.
So they will go, really, when they say, I will stand and take a bullet for you.
Yeah.
They will. They really mean that. I think about people that I would say that work in that service.
Right.
Not just police officers, etc., but people that actually stand in the gap, even for the president.
Yeah.
And they are ready to jump in front of
That's why I sit behind the
a
desk.
bullet.
Let me tell you that. That's why I
Okay.
sit behind the desk.
So
Because I ain't taking a
That
bullet.
big to
All right?
protect you.
I ain't taking a bullet.
So I'm just saying, how far would you go to preserve yourself?
That's always an interesting question because I always say I won't know what I'm going to do until I'm faced with what I'm going to have to do. So I could say I don't foresee myself doing X, Y, and Z. But we come down to it's me, you, my family, or somebody like that. Oh, yes. I do believe I'm capable of having to protect myself or my family or my loved ones by any means necessary. But you say, where do it come from? I'm going to agree with E. I'm going to agree with everything we said, but E is telling the right thing. Sometimes it's not a bad thing. It's how we're taught. It's how we're geared. It's how we're raised. Remember, self-preservation, we as black people, we always had the least of. I remember my grandmother canned. How many of us can now? We eat
yeah.
processed
No.
foods. My grandmother canned. She froze. Her meat. She was packing salt and can put it away. So these were things that were taught, and it preserved them and it kept them. So it's how sometimes it's things that we're learned, that were taught to us, that we had to gain experience from doing, as Jill said.
That's right.
So it all depends, and that's also your moral beliefs of some things. How
Right,
you perform.
and that's why I said it's not bad. And
Right.
so he's just trying to put words in our mouth.
I'm not putting words in nobody's mouth.
I'm
If
just-
you listen
but-
to the content, how y'all was
Listening.
talking about self-preservation, honestly, listen to yourself and listen how
I'm
you
getting
talk
ready
about
to
it.
put some beauty on it.
No, I'm
if
just
you
saying.
let
You
me.
talking about? Just listen how you talking about
The
it.
show was only 1
Okay,
minute
you're
in.
right. I'm going back
1
to
minute
listening.
in, I could
I'm
see
going
if we
back to
was
listening.
already
In
at
the terms
25
of, like,
minutes.
what we like relationships though, like your self-preservation is affecting that other person. So
That's
that's where I
right.
was coming from, to say like there are times when it
Yes.
is not healthy. It's one thing to preserve yourself by taking care of your health or feeding yourself, working out, but
Absolutely.
when your self-preservation comes across and starts to affect another
abuse
person
or
right,
neglect.
right?
That's right. So that's where I wanted to go. So I was going to say, let's put some beauty on this.
I'm done.
So it's okay for you to take time to groom and to stroke your beard and your head and get a massage and do all those wonderful things. For me, at this age and stage in my life, preserving my skin is a great thing. So that's why I cannot get into these back and forth arguments and debates, because I need to keep my face from going through too much stress. So I understand self-care and self-preservation. And so meanwhile, let's get into this. So where I was going with that, when I said, how far would you go? And then I mentioned boundaries.
Right.
Do you have any boundaries? Are there any reasons why you wouldn't? Because one thing I want to get into is the church. Because a lot of times people are selfish. People are selfish. I want to say there's a religion out now called self-made. I don't know if it really is, but you hear people saying I'm self-made. It's
Right.
almost like it's all about self. I don't know
Gotcha.
what it's really
Right,
called.
right.
But sometimes people don't care at what cost. They gonna lie, cheat, steal, kill. They gonna do whatever it is to protect their own, no matter what. They're not thinking about God, what God say not to do or obeying God.
Right.
So I want y'all to think on the church. right now.
Well, in that aspect where I say it depends on your moral upbringing and your moral belief, thou shalt not kill. There's some people that are pacifists. They don't believe no matter what you do or how you get there that you don't harm anybody. You just don't. So
There's a time too.
yeah, there's a
See,
time too. But I'm just saying.
You want to read once. They always want to read one and not understand the other. There's a time under the sun for everything.
I agree.
So at this point, okay, I'm gonna be quiet.
No, keep going.
Keep
Go
going.
ahead, break it down.
You were right.
You speaking, you preaching. Is it the Old Testament or the New Testament?
I'm just saying. You talk about the church, and the church is one of the most self-preserved places.
I'm gonna agree with you.
Period. And I'm just gonna say this from this standpoint of, And once again, you finna go. I'm finna go down E. Fikes lane.
Okay.
Take us down.
You're welcome.
I'm finna run down this lane.
Okay.
Matter of fact, I'm gonna be like the preacher and hold my ear down this lane.
Kick your leg up as you go.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that church self is preserved is themselves. A lot of churches are for themselves, not for nobody else, and it's evident in our community. Period. As long as it pertains within them four walls of that building, that's all they care about. Not worrying about what happens outside them four walls.
So you're saying that's bad.
That's
horrible.
So
seriously
you
bad.
agree with us that there can be,
Yeah.
spots when it's bad? Because I agree fully with that. With
It's
the
spots
church,
when there's bad, but it's times when it's actually needed,
but not in that. Yeah,
but not in that sector,
Yeah.
not in that world. And when you scream and preach every day, God love this, God do this and do that, but God and Bible do and all that. Then when I walk down the aisle, then Sister Jones in the back of the church just gave her last $5 and put it in the collection plate,
Exactly.
and she came to get a meal from the church.
Yeah.
Let's make it make sense.
and y'all
Right.
know this, and you're still asking her.
And yeah.
And,
I
and-
appreciate that.
And he is right. And you talk about the church, and I think we talked about this before we came on air, Doc V. If we're all, say we're children of God, we all believe in God, why is there black churches? Why is there white churches? Why is there Catholic churches? Why is there Baptist churches? Why
Why
is
is
there
it religion? Period.
Yes,
Yes.
I'm just saying.
Amen.
So those self-preservation of those is their ministry, their message, the things that they want to do. And even as he said, even in the black community, why is there Baptist? Why are there so many Baptist churches? Why are there so many? The preservation is for whatever that ministry is, whatever that belief is, whatever
Right.
that teaching system is, and they want to keep it as theirs. Like, Catholics, they don't think that anybody should marry outside of the Catholic faith. Jews believe the same thing because they don't want their beliefs so-called watered down or tainted. So
To
they
preserve
want-
their
preserve-
ministry.
Yeah,
Do you believe money have anything to do with it?
think
Money
money-
has
for
the
sure.
most biggest thing to do with it. Period.
Okay, so
I mean, bottom line.
so just talking about money. So from an economic perspective, let's look at the wealth gap. So while we're talking about self-preservation,
Well, and this was something that I did study, and I wanted to put on this. And I want to say this, and I said this in a meeting that I presented it as a black and white issue, but I want to make it broader. I want to make it the powers that be and then the rest of us. Think about it, because if you think about it, poor white people have it just bad as poor black people, but they don't realize it. But if you look at everything now, black people after the Civil War, we had 1.1% of the wealth in America, in a country of America. 1.1%. It's 2023. Guess what our percentage of America's wealth
Same.
is?
And matter of fact, it
Two.
dropped. It probably dropped.
got to have some kind of improvement.
It's 1.1%.
That's what you said it was back then.
The same.
Wow.
So, and this is why I want to bring this point up: the wage gap or the wealth gap. I don't know. We're all about the same age, so y'all might remember the trickle down theory. It started.
Trickle down?
Yeah, it started with
Is
Herbert
this-
Hoover,
okay.
but then Ronald Reagan and the first George Bush, they preached this trickle down theory.
Is this a trickle down theory that they say happens in the church if the pastor get a divorce and then it trickles down?
No,
to
it is
the
not.
congregation? Oh no, it's
That's a
another
whole
trickle down.
different one.
Okay,
Well, that's another conversation.
Okay,
But-
gotcha.
About the money.
But yeah,
Pastor get a Bentley and everybody else supposed to get.
Oh,
And
it's a
that-
lot of
that-
trickle downs then.
And that's
okay.
that's a thought. That's the premise.
Okay.
And that's why I want to go where E was saying. So this is where America is more of a business than it is a country. So the premise is that we're going to keep the wealthy wealthy.
Right.
We're going to make sure that's why they get tax cuts. That's why they get tax incentives, tax break. And I use this example. Ford was in bankruptcy almost when Obama was in president. They were supposedly going under. So the U.S. bought them out, gave them incentives, gave them tax cuts, everything. In the premise that, and this is trickle down, we're going to make them rich. So they're going to build more factories. They're going to create more jobs.
Right.
They're going to do this, and this to help the people that's up under them. You know what Ford did?
What
They closed factories. They cut jobs. They kept their bottom line from this being a red 2 years ago to this being in black. So they cut it. Their preservation was, okay, we got the money, so let's keep the money. It didn't trickle down. It
Wow.
didn't trickle down, and it has not trickled down, and it will not trickle
Will
down.
not.
And the powers that be, they're going to keep it that way. Think about our government. The laws don't change
Yeah.
to help people. Laws change to help the government.
Okay.
Yep.
And,
Wow.
and when I use this black and white, and I got to ask this question, Jill. I asked you this before, and I want to ask you this now. For it to trickle down, what are white people willing to sacrifice to have black people become equal? And secondly, why would white people sacrifice to let the black people be equal if it's going
And
to be?
here's how, and this is exactly how I answered it the other night when you asked. So if I have what's mine and what belongs to my family that we are preserving, whether it be money or food or rights or whatever it was, I wouldn't give that away to a white person. I wouldn't give that away to any race. And like you said, why would I? And when we talk about self-preservation, these are things that I feel that I need to survive and that my daughter needs to survive. So if I give those up and give them to anyone, where is that going to leave me?
And that goes to my point. And here's what I say. And I'm on the street with E right now, so I'm gonna get some people to think about it. But here's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Why would white people trust the black community to be part of their establishment when they say we can't take care of our own? Think about it. They're preserving what this country is built on. So why in their mind, why would we expect them to give up something to people they don't trust?
Right.
I see.
Think about it.
Man,
about
you said something powerful, real deep, and I think people missed it. They are protecting something that this country was built on.
Yes.
So if they're gonna preserve what this country was built on, how? Well, I almost cussed.
Don't cuss now.
I almost used some other languages.
cuss.
But why? How can blacks even begin to form or have anything if people are preserving something that was meant and specifically designed to shut another culture
Right.
down?
Yes.
Right.
So I
agree.
mean, now at this point,
that's
we have to-
self-preservation as itself.
Yeah. So at this point, we got to learn our own self-preservation.
Okay,
Break
boom.
that.
You just went into my next question. So, real quick, short, when was the last time you did something personally to self-preserve?
What time is it?
You getting ready to do something.
No.
Okay, Jill? Okay.
About 2 hours ago,
Okay. Can you share it, or what is that
mean,
like?
I shut everything down.
Okay, shut down.
Yeah.
Okay,
at some point you have to.
Okay.
and the biggest thing about it is we have to start having self-preservation for our mental health.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
That's where everything starts at.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I was like earlier, we need to think of the positive aspects of self-preservation. That is the most important self-preservation you can have, is having a self-preservation for your mental health.
I love it. Jill?
Every single day before I came here, I had a 13-and-a-half-hour day because I had to stay over to make sure that everybody gets their money tomorrow, because I
Don't get paid.
You write me a check?
cannot lose my job
Right.
because I have to feed my
That's
child.
self-preservation
So
right
I preserve every day when I
Yes.
go to work.
That's good.
You know, I said this at the beginning of the year, and I have to agree with E. And it's not only about your mental health; it's about sometimes your physical well-being. I have taken my time back from people.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I've taken my time back from people. Not everybody's accessible to my time anymore. Where a lot of people used to, they can call me, and at the drop of the hat, I would think about, whatever I could do to help. But no, I've taken my time back from people because I need that.
I like that you said that, but because you're married, some married people, they get offended if a person need to have alone time and space. So how do you how do you deal with that or balance that out, or
His
is there
wife
an
actually
You don't get
agreement
married.
there
His wife
at home?
Look, his wife actually like it. She's like, gosh, please. You want some alone time? Don't even worry about
Really?
it. I'm over here. Oh,
Really?
man, I'm
I've been
sorry.
waiting for you to ask. No.
Right.
Yeah, like you say, it's just a balance. You just got to find the time, and you got to have that understanding. And it's not about you at this point.
Okay.
My time is about me.
Right. And you know, and so this is where, and so just to take a little step on the other side for myself, where I say I had to learn this, I had to get to this place, because the word altruism,
Yes.
remember we talked about that before. I believe that that's something that I've been living. So let me just give you the definition, just so everybody's on the same page. When you practice selfless concern for the wellness and well-being of others, no matter what it costs you,
Yeah.
you will put somebody else's vision and somebody else's schedule, day, etc.,
Right.
in front of yours.
But-
So now I know this is where I got in trouble before when I said that. It's not that I neglect myself to a default,
Great.
but there have been times.
Right. And I wanted to ask you, think about that. And we've talked about this before. There has come a point in time where your well has become dry. You hit the bottom of your well, no matter what it was.
Absolutely.
And if you didn't take that time, if you're not taking that time, Doc V, sometimes, and I'm going to agree with you again, sometimes you have to shut out, and it has to be just about you.
I agree, but I'm learning that, and I'm forcing myself to get there. But you know, it's interesting because just like the animals, I mean, we were created in God's image and etc. and things like that. We were created to do certain things, and so it's interesting in researching this and just digging a little deeper into self-preservation, looking at the animals. It's interesting. I know I mentioned the possum earlier, but looking at like the honeybee. The honeybee will sacrifice his own life basically to protect his own.
Yeah.
There's other animals like the octopus and squids, salmon, that will basically, they're only in existence to reproduce.
Right.
Yeah.
So as soon as the male fertilizes the egg, he dies.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the female gives birth, she dies. So I hate to say this, and I'm trying. I feel like I'm connected to those animals.
Well,
and so I'm trying to
And this
get out of
opens
that.
it up perfectly. I wanted to make sure to get this in. And so when you say that, Jesus over and over and over did the absolute opposite of self-preservation. If we are all followers of Jesus, shouldn't we be living along those lines? And not just that, but like I said, a big component of self-preservation is fear. If we have fear, if we are anxious, if we are fearing death or having anxiety, do we have faith? And with that being said, if we are covered by the divine protection,
Exactly.
should we self-preserve?
And
Yes.
and I love that. And
That's great. That's
and-
great.
and-
That's great.
and-
I can't talk
and
on
that's,
that one.
And that's exactly when I tell you that's my heart, because that was my mother, that's my father, that's what I come from.
Right.
So when you don't know anything other than that, then that's what you do.
Yeah.
As they say, your environment shapes you,
Right.
who you are. Now there's another side, real quick, and I know our time is up, but there's another side to self-preservation. And I just want to mention it real quick, and we may be able to talk on it more tomorrow, but suicide is one of those things, and it's unfortunate, but people have said you're selfish if you commit suicide. And Jill, you have personal experience with that,
Yeah.
and can you just speak to that?
And like you said, just to be brief, so I think that selfishness is the biggest misconception when it comes to suicide. And I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago because I thought that it was selfish. But also, it doesn't ring true, and here's why. Because when somebody is contemplating suicide, those rational thoughts are elusive. And I can tell you that my person was the most selfless person. He would have never wanted to hurt anyone, especially his children. So I think it's important to understand that in their eyes, in his eyes, it was a selfless act, because when you are that far in your mind, it feels like you are a burden. And I don't even like when someone says they committed suicide. He died from suicide by depression. That he didn't commit that. So no, today, after having such a close experience with it, I think that in his mind, he thought he was doing everyone a favor. So for him, it was a selfless act.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful. With that being said, I know we are out of time, and I'm sure there's so many other things that,
that went quick.
we wanted to share and talk about. And so I'm going to leave you with this before you close us out. But reminding people, it is not your job, and reminding myself, it is not your job to do everything for everybody. It's okay to say no. This is Neutral Voices. Thank you for joining us. And E, as we always say,
Always protect your mind.